All right, listeners, ready to dive deep. Today we're taking a look at Enbodie.
Enbodie. Yeah, they're a startup trying to total change personal care.
Yeah, and we've got a ton of stuff to go through. Their pitch deck, a profile on Unicorns Club.
Oh, and don't forget their social media. We get to peek behind the curtain a bit there.
Exactly. So we're going to be like detectives.
Yeah.
Cutting through the hype.
Seeing if Enbodie can actually do what they say they're going to do.
Are they the real deal or just a bunch of hot air? That's what we want to find out.
Especially if you care about what you put on your body and you know the planet.
And we've got a unique angle here because we're seeing them from all sides.
Yeah, what they're telling investors, what experts think, and how they're presenting themselves publicly.
Lots to unpack, so let's jump right in. Their tagline is, personal care harmonized with planetary care.
Kitschy, right. What do you think?
I like it. It speaks to what a lot of people want these days, right? Like stuff that's good for us, Andy, the planet.
Yeah, for sure. And they're not just saying that, they're talking about science-backed data, ethical sourcing.
Transparency.
Yeah.
All those buzzwords that actually mean something now.
Right. And you see that on their social media, too, with their hashtag BFY, like beauty for you.
It's a good way to connect with our audience, I think.
Yeah, they're speaking their language. They get that we want to look good, but not, at any cost.
Totally.
Yeah.
And their pitch deck is pretty blunt about the problems with the beauty industry.
Oh, yeah. They don't hold back. They actually say stuff like, traditional health approach needs disrupting.
Our planet is in crisis mode.
Right.
Like they're not afraid to make a statement.
Strong stuff. And they back it up, too. They talk about how traditional dermatology can be so frustrating.
Oh, yeah, totally. Long wait times, expensive treatments.
And sometimes it feels like they're just treating the symptoms, not the root cause,
And then there's the whole trust issue with the beauty industry.
I mean, how many times have you bought something because of some miracle claim only to be disappointed?
Too many times. It's like they're always over-promising and under-delivering.
Exactly. And Enbodie knows that. They're hitting a nerve with this whole transparency thing.
People are tired of being tricked. They want real information so they can make informed choices.
For sure. And then they bring up the environmental impact of the beauty industry.
Yeah, they mentioned this crazy statistic. The beauty industry produces 120 billion units of non-recycled packaging a year.
That's insane. Like a mountain of trash, all because we want to look good.
It's a huge problem. And it's not just packaging either. There are so many products with harmful ingredients.
Right. They specifically call out oxybenzone and octinoxate, those sunscreen ingredients.
The ones that damage coral reefs.
Yep, those ones. And they also highlight how overwhelming it is to find the right products.
Seriously, there are just so many options, especially if you're trying to avoid certain ingredients.
Ugh, it's a nightmare. So basically they're saying the system is broken.
Yeah, it's not good for our health, it's not sustainable, and there's a huge lack of trust.
Right. So the question is, what's their solution? What are they going to do about it?
That's the exciting part. They're basically saying, forget everything you know about personal care.
They want to bring it into the 21st century with tech and personalization.
And it's not just like some fancy gadget. They're talking about smartphone-based diagnostics.
They claim these diagnostics are over 80% accurate. Can you imagine, analyzing your skin from your phone?
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And then there's this AI assistant they've developed called EVI.
Oh, yeah. EVI is cool. So, you're in the store, you want to buy a product, you scan it with your phone.
And EVI tells you what's in it.
Yeah.
Like if it has something you're allergic to or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It can even tell you if the product aligns with your values, like if it's cruelty-free or sustainable.
Hold on, wait a minute. Where is he getting all this information from? Is he just making stuff up?
Nope. They're building this massive database called the Enbodie Global Data Repository.
Okay, so it's pulling data from everywhere, like scientific studies, clinical trials.
Government regulations, environmental assessments, you name it.
Wow, so it's like they're doing all the research for us. No more squinting at tiny labels trying to figure stuff out.
Exactly. And they're not just stopping there. They want to engage directly with brands and manufacturers, too.
So it's not just about giving us information. It's about changing how the whole industry works.
Right. It's about pushing for more transparency and accountability across the board.
And when it comes to sustainability, they're incorporating safety and sustainability ratings into the app.
Yeah, so you can see at a glance how a product scores on both fronts.
It's like they're giving consumers a superpower, the power to make informed choices and support brands that are doing good.
And speaking of making a difference, have you noticed how everyone wants personalized everything these days?
Oh, totally. Like personalized nutrition, fitness, it's everywhere.
And healthcare is no different. With rising costs and long wait times, people want to take control of their health.
Exactly. And Enbodie is tapping into that perfectly.
Right.
They even cite a study that found 73% of global consumers.
Are willing to change their consumption habits to support sustainability.
So the demand is definitely there for what they're offering.
Yeah, for sure. They've got a compelling mission, a cutting-edge solution, and they're riding a wave of consumer trends.
But can they actually make this work as a business?
That's the big question, isn't it?
We'll have to dive into their business model to find out.
Hmm.
Okay, so can Enbodie really turn this vision into a viable business?
That's what we got to figure out, right? I mean, their solution sounds amazing.
But the market is already pretty crowded with similar apps and products.
Yeah, so how do they plan to stand out and, actually make money?
Right. Let's start with their business model. What's the plan?
Well, they're going with a freemium app model so you can download it for free.
And then there are like in-app purchases for premium features.
Exactly. It's a pretty common approach these days, Makes it accessible to everyone.
Yeah, and it still gives them a way to generate revenue from people who want those extra features.
Right, and they're not just banking on app subscriptions. Their big play is B2B data monetization.
Wait, hold up. B2B what now?
B2B data monetization. It's basically selling data insights to other businesses.
So they're collecting all this info about product ingredients, consumer preferences, sustainability trends.
Exactly, and that data is super valuable to companies like beauty brands, retailers.
Even researchers who want to understand consumer behavior and trends.
Right on. So Enbodie packages these insights and sells them through a tiered API.
Tiered API meaning like different levels of access depending on what a company needs.
You got it. It's a smart way to create recurring revenue streams.
Okay, so we've got the freemium app for individual users and then this data play for businesses.
Two birds, one stone.
But what kind of numbers are we talking about here? Are they going to be rolling in dough?
Well, their projections are pretty ambitious. They're hoping to bring in tens of millions of pounds within a couple of years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a lot of dough. We got to remember those are just projections.
Of course. But you know what's encouraging? They actually have a detailed financial model.
So they're not just throwing out random numbers, they've thought this through.
Right. They're being transparent about their assumptions and how they came up with those figures.
That's a good sign.
Mm-hmm.
But making projections is one thing. Actually achieving them is a whole other story.
So true. And they're facing some stiff competition out there.
We talked about Yucca and Skin plus me, right? And then there are the big players like L'Oreal.
The 800-pound gorillas, they've got decades of experience and tons of resources.
So how can Enbodie possibly compete with those giants?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, they do have a pretty impressive list of features.
Yeah, the personalized diagnostics, AI ingredient analysis, sustainability ratings, direct connection to brands.
It's a pretty powerful package. And their holistic approach is a major strength.
Right. It's like they're taking the best bits from all their competitors and putting them together in a new way.
And that's where their B2B strategy is really smart. They're not just competing with other brands.
They're also trying to collaborate with them. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's like disrupting the industry from within.
By providing valuable data to these companies, they can actually influence how products are developed.
Exactly. And push the industry towards more sustainable and transparent practices.
That's a pretty clever strategy. If it works, it could be a win-win for everyone.
Right. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. They still have some major hurdles to overcome.
Like what?
Well, gaining consumer trust is huge. People are wary of sharing their personal data these days.
Especially health information.
Yeah.
They'll need to be super transparent about how they handle that data.
Absolutely. And they need to convince people to actually use the app. It's one thing to have a great idea.
But getting millions of users is a whole other challenge.
Right. They'll need a killer marketing strategy and a product that people actually love.
And they can't forget about the tech side of things. The world of AI and data is constantly changing.
So true. They'll need to stay ahead of the curve and constantly innovate.
And of course, they'll need funding to make all this happen. They're currently in a pre-seed round.
But they'll likely need to raise a lot more capital to scale up and reach their goals.
So it's a long road ahead for Enbodie. But I have to say, I'm impressed with their vision.
Me too. It's refreshing to see a startup that's genuinely trying to make a difference.
And not just chasing profits.
Exactly. But the big question is, can they actually execute their plan? Can they live up to the hype?
That's what we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive. We'll take a closer look at their financial projections.
Analyze their exit strategy and consider what their success could mean for the future of the industry.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our Enbodie deep dive.
Time to look into the future and see where they might be headed.
And of course, we got to talk about the money. They've got some pretty ambitious revenue goals.
Oh yeah, those projections in their pitch deck. Tens of millions of pounds in just a few years.
Remember their two-pronged approach, the freemium app A&D, that B2B data play.
They're hoping to rake it in from both sides, individual users and big companies.
It's like they're building two businesses at the same time.
Mhm.
But projections are one thing.
Right, they're not guarantees. We've seen plenty of startups with big dreams that fall flat.
But at least Enbodie seems to have a solid plan. They've put together a detailed financial model.
Yeah, they're not just making stuff up. They've got a breakdown of their assumptions and how they got to those numbers.
That transparency is definitely a good sign. It shows they've thought this through carefully.
And their exit strategy is pretty interesting, too. They've hinted at a possible acquisition down the line.
Oh, you mean like getting bought by a bigger company?
Exactly. That always gets investors excited. Think about it. They're positioning themselves at the forefront of a big shift.
Personalized wellness, tech-driven solutions, sustainability, all the hot topics these days.
And big companies are scrambling to keep up, so Enbodie could be a prime target for acquisition.
It's like they're making themselves irresistible bait for a company that wants to get ahead in this space.
Right. Imagine the giants in tech or healthcare or beauty. They're always looking for innovative startups.
And Enbodie ticks a lot of boxes. AI, data, conscious consumerism, the whole package.
They even compare themselves to SAP Ariba in their pitch deck.
That B2B marketplace giant, that's a bold comparison.
It shows they're thinking big. They believe they can disrupt the industry in a similar way.
So an acquisition is on the table, but they've also mentioned the possibility of an IPO.
Going public, that's a whole other level. It means a lot more money, but also a lot more risk.
It's interesting that they're considering both options. It shows they're ambitious, but also realistic.
And regardless of how they exit, their success could have a huge impact on the entire industry.
Imagine if their approach becomes the norm. Personalized products, transparent ingredients, sustainable practices.
It would be a game changer for consumers. We'd have more control over what we put on our bodies.
And we'd be more aware of the impact our choices have on the environment.
Exactly. It would force companies to raise their standards. No more hiding behind vague marketing claims.
They'd actually have to deliver on their promises. Enbodie could be a catalyst for a real industry-wide evolution.
They're definitely pushing boundaries and shaking things up, whether they achieve massive success or not.
They're paving the way for a more conscious and informed approach to personal care.
And that's something we can all get behind, right?
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's this Enbodie story shows us that we have a choice. We don't have to settle for products that are harmful.
We can demand better and support companies that align with our values.
It's about being informed consumers, doing our research, and holding companies accountable.
Enbodie might be just one startup, but they represent a growing movement towards a more conscious and sustainable future.
And that's a future we can all be a part of.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Enbodie. We're excited to see what they do next.
And we'll be sure to keep you updated along the way. Until then, stay curious and keep exploring.
Step up your game, join the unicorns club. Making it rain, nothing ever enough. Invest in the future, watch it all blow up. Unicorns club, we take